life. Got this, go chase it, live your life. Enlighten you. Let the light shine through. Let more light enlighten you. Just see it through.
I'm Melissa Thrasher.
And I'm Lolita Cummings.
Welcome to Enlighten U, Eastern Michigan University's podcast for students. Today we want to talk about an emerging problem with startling statistics.
Did you all know that according to a recent study late last year, 23% of undergrads and 12% of graduate students said they sometimes don't have enough food? So if you are feeling the pressure the same, just know that you are not alone. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Joining us to tell their story is Casey Lamont, a graduate assistant for social media in my office, EMU's Division of Communications. We also have Dr. Aesha Mustafa, a licensed therapist and an assistant professor in EMU's Department of Leadership and Counseling. Casey and Aesha, welcome to Enlighten U, and thank you so much for joining us. So I want to welcome you both to the show. Casey, welcome. And Dr. Aesha Mustafa, welcome to the show. Nice to have you both. So obviously this show is about students who are finding it challenging to meet their food needs, right? And so Casey, we wanted to start with you, ask you a little bit about your story. I know that this starts way back for you in your childhood, and the lack of food and uncertainty. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience and how it impacts you today?
Yeah, of course. So I'm not from Michigan. I am from rural Appalachia, and food scarcity, food insecurity is not something that I'm not familiar with. It's not something that only happened to me and people in my community. Growing up, it was everywhere. There would be a lot of my peers, a lot of people in communities that relied on food from school lunches, so much to the point where our schools were implementing after-school feeding programs where students could get additional snacks. During snow days, they would have drive-thrus for students who didn't have access to food to be able to get those resources. Growing up, I had a single mom with 3 children. In an area like that, it was really tough at times. There would be times where, it would be ground beef and baked beans in a pan, and we'd eat on that for 2 or 3 days. I remember I shared a story with Melissa about how, sometimes the snow days got really hard and I would have a can of green beans for dinner. It's not really isolated to any particular community or demographic or culture or race. It really is something that is generational. It impacts these areas in ways that might not be evident from the surface. And a lot of people might not know that they are facing food insecurity to the degree where it is necessary to seek out additional resources.
Mm-hmm. Well, Casey, obviously you're doing well right now. You're getting ready to graduate with your MBA. Congratulations. Yay. So I know that it still impacts you today. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with that, those memories? And I mean, memories like that do bring families closer together. Yeah. But how do you deal with that as a college student at EMU?
I think a big part of going to college for every student is, being on your own for the first time in many different ways. For me, it was financially. It was my first time living alone, my first time having to budget, first time having to grocery shop on my own. I remember my first time going to the grocery store and seeing how much a box of cereal was. Mm-hmm. And, having to make those decisions like, oh, okay, so are we getting breakfast foods? If we're getting breakfast foods, or should we get cereal, or should we just get flour to make biscuits? Having to make those decisions that you never really thought of when your mom was the one swiping the card at the grocery store. I feel like it translates a lot into, into my life as I'm growing older, not just in, just my grocery trips, but kind of in every area financially. Sometimes you can say, I guess I'm not going to go to the movies this weekend with my friends. I guess I don't have to go out and eat, but you still have to eat. That's a need, and a need that you have to find a way to meet in whatever means necessary. So I've learned ways to kind of mix and match foods together to make a meal from scratch. I can make a meal from scratch if I need to. I know how to make soups if I have like 3 ingredients, using broth, flour, butter, and milk, and knowing how to stretch foods. I learned how to make a carton of eggs last 2 weeks. I've learned all of these things that have definitely helped me be able to manage that, especially with inflation. A carton of eggs used to be less than $1. Now it's nearing $3 in some places. So a lot of those things haven't just helped me manage my money better, but help ends meet in ways that some students just don't know how to do,
Right.
because they've never been taught. And like I mentioned before, a lot of people aren't concerned about that until their feet hit the ground and they have no choice but to figure it out for themselves. But fortunately, growing up, having to make those accommodations with what I had in my pantry, I was able to better understand, if I get a bag of dry beans from the grocery store or from Swoop's pantry, I know how to prepare them. I know how to incorporate that into a meal. I know how to budget at the grocery store. I know the difference between 85-15 beef and 70-30 beef, and and how to tell, okay, this one's cheaper, but I'm gonna need to use it for something like spaghetti or tacos, and just learning how to navigate that. And like I said, not just in groceries and food, but learning how to allocate that budget to get other necessities like gas for my car, textbooks, because being in the situation for the first time where you do have those amenities that you need to get, the gas, groceries, textbooks, any other bills, and a lot of students are having to pay for college too, and that's a lot, and it's scary. And one of the easiest ways to cut costs in a way is to get less at the grocery store, and a lot of times like that leads to getting less healthy options, and so you're kind of trying to juggle, do I want something good to eat, or do I need something healthy to eat, or just what you can have? No two people's stories are the same, but it's definitely learning how to navigate that.
That's very true. Thank you so much for sharing. You're right. No two people's story are the same, but thank you so much for sharing your story. You just said so much. We're gonna come back to so much of it, but I want to bring Aesha in a little bit, because a lot of what you dealt with as a child, you learn those lessons, and you are still managing your life based on that now. And so Aesha, I want to ask you, I'm assuming that there is an intersection between food insecurity and mental health. And can you talk about that a little bit? And then Casey, can you talk about what your mental health is like now as a result of how you grew up and the lack and scarcity when you were a child?
Yeah, absolutely. For folks with food insecurity, the worry of, if I go to the grocery store, are they going to have the cheapest option? Is my EBT food stamps card going to work? What happens if it doesn't work at the cash register and then I need to put food back? During the pandemic, food, I feel like bread, toilet paper, all these things are left. And with food insecurity, it doesn't cover toiletries or prepared food. So even if you're looking at sometimes at a grocery store and like mac and cheese that's been made at the counter, it may not cover these different things. And so even if someone comes to college and now they are not experiencing food insecurity, maybe the full meal plan, there's still this trigger of, am I going to have enough? So we think about our grandparents and the Depression, and my grandparents-in-laws have many pantries and freezers and fridge, and we'll say, how long has the potato salad been there? And like, it's still good. And it's not in the actual container, of course. And like, because there's still a panic from decades ago.
That and seasoning too, right?
Yeah,
it never goes old.
Exactly. It's just seasoned, so it's fine. Yeah, and so there's this panic of, even when there's access like Swoops, like, well, what if I get there late? What if it doesn't have the thing I need? Do I have the proper silverware, cooking supplies to do it? Because we think about, well, there's food access here, but well, you may need a strainer, different skillets, different things like that. And then if you add in, if you're vegetarian, gluten-free, keep kosher, like there's all these extra things that are going to be involved with that. So there can be this panic of, do I have enough that's not going to necessarily go away even if you have an ample amount?
That is so true. I'm thinking about my parents and going down the basement with all the canned goods down there and how we would grow all of our vegetables and catch the fish and all that. And you're right. Things never, somehow the expiration date didn't matter. Things never went back.
No, and you're like,
Never went back.
Sometimes I think our parents forget about that they still have it in their refrigerator,
Yeah,
right?
it's easy to do, I
yeah,
think.
it's
It's
easy to do. I guess we're all guilty of it sometimes.
Yeah. So Casey, what do you feel like you still carry with you from that, from a mental health standpoint?
Sometimes when it comes to, making a meal, grocery shopping, sometimes some of the ingredients, the cheapest option isn't there. So you have to, sacrifice getting that compared to what else you need in your shopping cart. And one of the things that I've noticed definitely carries with me is sometimes I do over anticipate what I'm going to eat for the week. I go to Swoop's on Monday.
Every Monday?
Every Monday.
Okay.
What I can get at Swoop's to check off my list, whether that's eggs, bread, canned vegetables, meat, anything like that, whatever I can't fill in the necessary food groups. Right after Swoop's, I go to Aldi. That's where I get my fresh vegetables. Love Aldi.
love Aldi.
Love Aldi.
Okay.
And then, that's a great place to get, prepared foods like calzones, microwave meals for, when you have to eat quick. Yeah, very quickly in a moment's notice. Because you don't always have time to prepare a big meal. And then, what I can't get there, obviously there's some things that, as I mentioned before, flour, making biscuits, love making biscuits and gravy, but the only place you can get good sausage is from Meyer. They've got the Tennessee Pride sausage. So, yeah, I don't want to sacrifice the price there. I'm willing to pay for that. But, sometimes I'll get home, have a meal planned and realize, oh, I don't have any potatoes. Oh, I don't have any milk. And a lot of times that creates a lot of stress surrounding, well, what am I going to eat now? I don't know what I'm going to make now. I was anticipating cooking this for dinner. And sometimes I give up in a way. I'm like, you know what? I'll make a sandwich. We'll do that. Or sometimes I'll even be like, I'm just going to drink an Ensure and then, eat dinner later. And so sometimes I do catch myself skipping meals, because sometimes I don't have time to cook a big meal with what resources I could get at Swoop. Sometimes I don't anticipate having a busy day and I don't have a chance to stop and clean my kitchen, prepare the kitchen, prepare vegetables. Budgeting your finances as well as budgeting your time when you use those resources. So, admittedly, that's not the healthiest habit I have, but that's something I've definitely noticed.
But I think you have some wonderful skills, though, that you learned, knowing how to make soup out of a few. I can't do that. I mean, it's like a mechanic going into a junkyard, walking into a junkyard and then driving out with the car. You can make something out of nothing. And I look in there and I just say, they're just parts. There's nothing. And I think that's admirable. You mentioned Swoop, so I want to bring that in a little bit.
Yeah.
For our students who have not ever visited Swoops, can you tell us where it is and what services they offer and what do you find most valuable with them?
So Swoop's Pantry is in Pierce Hall, and it's basically just open resources for students and alumni, staff. They have opportunities too that even outreach to the community sometimes. It's Swoop's food pantry, but they also have other necessities. Like you had mentioned before, some students might not have the resources in their kitchen to prepare some of the food items that they have. So they have sometimes pots and pans and cooking utensils, as well as paper towels, toilet paper, and other toiletries. But then they have the food as well. And this is anywhere from dry goods like pasta, rice, beans, canned goods, pasta sauce. My favorite is the frozen goods. Sometimes you'll stumble upon some really nice cuts of meat. I think last time I went, I got a 3-pack of sirloin. They've got fresh bread. They also have gluten-free options, halal options. I know recently through Ramadan, they had some like prepared packages of, foods that followed those specific standards. And they have milk, eggs, and it really is, it's kind of like a treasure hunt. I love every time I go because I never know what I'm going to find. But I think every time I've gone, I found something that was like a little gem. And like I said before, when I go to Swoops, I tend to go to Aldi afterwards, and I love it when I can go in and find like a pot roast, and I'm like, oh, when I go to Aldi, I'm gonna get potatoes and onions and everything to make this. My favorite thing about it is that it's completely free, no strings attached, no judgment from the staff,
Love
no
that.
questions asked.
Love that. So you don't feel that there's any stigma
No.
associated with it? No one is judging you?
No, not
or-
at all.
That's amazing.
It's
That's
very
great.
welcoming. No looks or glances from the other students there. It really is just a resource that I'm so grateful for on campus. And as I mentioned, they've got the food, the toiletries, but they also have like a clothing section for students who might need shoes, t-shirts. And again, that's no questions asked. It's definitely something that I'm glad to have found on campus. But I'm also really grateful that I've had the opportunity to share it with my peers. I'm always talking about Swoops. I'm always,
Always.
when I get, the opportunity to get like a large amount of food, like there was one time I got a 3-pound package of meat. Obviously they can't section that out, so I took the whole 3 pounds and used that as an opportunity to have a taco night for my friends for one of my friends' birthdays.
I love that.
And I was able to get tomatoes, lettuce, onions, even tortillas from Swoops as well. So we had the birthday dinner, and I'm like, all right, everyone say thank you to Swoops, because this is how I was able to do that. But it's just really nice that I can still do things like that for my friends, because even though it's not in my budget to, have these big meals, to cook in these large portions, I was still able to have a dinner for my friends and not worry about, how every single penny it was going to cost me. So yeah.
Because a couple of things I hear in your story is, one, Swoops allows you to have a community and not feel like, oh, a friend invited me over, can I get a snack, versus you can give back and share that meal. Another thing that you mentioned is with using Swoops and Aldi's, you don't know what you're going to get. So people are always like, well, just budget your money and your time.
It's not that easy.
It's not easy. And then you're running around campus with school, going to Swoops, which is burning more calories. And then you're supposed to, like, the planning part of it. And then people are like, well, look at the Sunday flyer and the coupons. And some of these coupons are like, buy 10 boxes of cereal and save 20 cents. And you're like, I don't need this all. People like, shop in bulk, but if there's not money for that. I love my Costco, but like, Costco's expensive when I walk out the door.
3 heads of romaine lettuce
Exactly.
in a week.
And then there's this piece of like, what about transportation? And so if you also bring in, you go to Pantries and like carrying the bag home. Do you have a cart? And sometimes with Pantries, Swoops is great about this, but the time is like Tuesdays, 11 to 1. And you also need to get there early. And then sometimes places don't have condiments, seasoning, or the foods are dried beans. So now you need to cook the beans, have a stock pot that's big enough. And so you have the skills to do these, but a lot of times students don't have them. Or people say, well, pack your lunch. Well, how are they going to afford the Tupperware? Or a cold pack. And so like, there's all these things to think about versus just like budget your time. Like, it's exhausting. And if money's low, it can't be like, oh, I'll just DoorDash. Like, it's like, oh no, I need to use this.
And
these
it goes directly back to no 2 stories are the same. So there's no formula to it, and it really is figuring it out.
Yeah, but what I like about Swoops, this is what I do know. I know that it's a very popular resource on campus, and that the numbers, of course, because of the inflation, are skyrocketed. A lot of students are utilizing the services right now. But I do know that Swoops listens to students' needs, and so they do have an Amazon list available. And so the list responds to, people like Casey who, come to Swoops for certain goods. Those goods will be on that list, and people can donate to help Swoops out. So I do love that resource. But just thinking back to what Casey said before about missing meals, I think that's a very important thing to talk about, because there is a difference between missing meals, so the lack of food, and starvation. So I wanted to ask Dr. Mustafa the difference between the two, because like Casey, missing a meal might be normal to our students, and might not necessarily be something that's,
because I've worked with folks in a therapy setting who are like, well, no, I'm okay, I missed a meal. here and there, but I'm not like other folks who are losing weight, can't afford medication. And so there's a comparison of like, I'm okay. But with missing meals, we're also missing our nutrients, ability to focus in class. So I think as faculty and staff, not assuming that students are engaged in your lecture versus maybe they haven't eaten all day, or the food they have access to, or very quick, cheap, high energy things. Like, so donuts can fill you up for a short amount of time. You're going to have the spike in sugar and energy, but it's going to come crashing down. And so some people are like, well, please don't eat in class. It's distracting. And I'm like, I'm going to be munching on something. If you want to have a meal, knock yourself out. And including the fact that, I mean, I understand a lot of spaces around campus will say no food or drink because people might spill. But like, what are the messages around that when this may be the time that they can eat?
That is a really
And so
good
thinking
point.
about what are we saying when we have certain rules, or like, please keep your camera on while you're on Zoom. People are like, I would like to eat in private, or maybe the meal they're having is not something that is robust, as rice and beans. And so I think it's something we can all pay attention to.
I like that.
That's really good. So there is a connection, I'm assuming, between anxiety about eating and depression about eating. And you gave us some really good tips on how you do that. Are there other tips that students can use to kind of manage that anxiety? I mean, obviously knowing that Swoops is available. Are there other things that they can do?
I'll let you take this one first. Yeah.
I mean, I mentioned before how, I learned how to make like soup in pot roast and stuff like that. I think something that really helps is learning how to make some of those more sustainable meals, like a big pot of chili, chicken and dumplings, because then you can freeze that. And you can save that. And in a way, it's kind of making your own microwave ready-to-eat meal. And that's something that I found definitely helps, especially if it's something that I like. If it's something that I like, then I know I'm going to want to eat it, and I'm willing to let it take up that room in my freezer, and I'm going to reach for it.
It sounds like taking control of some of these things, right?
Yeah.
Those things that you can do.
Yeah.
So even though you don't have the resources that someone else may have, you don't have the grocery budget that someone else may have, it can still get done if you spend that extra time trying to prepare, prep, and learn. Because you learned a lot of these things by necessity, where some other students may be suddenly thrust into the situation.
Yeah.
You gonna teach a class, Casey?
Well, I mean, you make a good point. Like, there's a lot of elements to meals that some people don't really incorporate just because they don't know. Yes. So if all you have is like a meat and potatoes, you can make a gravy. That'll sustain you. That's another element that'll add that, the calcium and the protein and the fat that you need, that you might not be getting if you're just cooking, plain chicken and rice. You can make a sauce out of something as simple as butter, flour, and some seasonings. And that's a way to elevate the meal to make it, more interesting. So it's something different from what you're used to eating, but it's also more filling. In college, a lot of things, there's a lot of things that could be on your schedule, whether that's work, practice, rehearsal, class, and just, finding your own personal time. And sometimes it's wagering, do I want to have time to just relax, or do I want to put that time into making a meal? And that's a lot of the stress and anxiety that can come from that too. Because, say you have only a 30-minute break between class and you have to decide, should I be a couple minutes late to class so I can make something to eat? Or, is this professor going to get, upset that I'm late to class again? That harbors a lot of anxiety. If you are a timely person, that's something that you value, having to make those sacrifices.
Absolutely. But you can minimize them by doing some of that.
And I want to add a couple things with your story. It's having a go-to meal, particularly one that you're like, a pantry usually always has these staples and I want to eat. Because sometimes people are like, well, you just eat whatever you can. It's like, I'd like to enjoy my food and like deserve to be happy while I'm eating. And so having something that can be helpful. The other thing is some pantries will have recipes of these ingredients are here. This is what you could do with it. Another resource I want to plug is the Corner Health Center. They serve 12 to 25-year-olds and their children. They are 17 minutes from Pierce Hall and downtown Ypsi. And so they're a healthcare provider, but they also have a pantry that if you are a patient, you can go to daily. The community members can go weekly. And so I used to work there as a social worker. they would also give folks farmers market tokens, and they would take you to the farmers market, and they had a kitchen to be like, this is how you prepare stuff, because everyone's like, well, get the bulk vegetables, and it's like, I don't know what to do with all these.
That's the problem.
Like,
that is the problem.
you know, or here in the food pantry, like sometimes there'd be like polenta, and I'm like, I wouldn't know what to do with
polenta?
I don't know. Yeah, exactly. And so thinking about like, this is what you could actually do with these things. And it's great because it's serving the 12 to 25-year-olds and learning what these skill sets are, because it's a lot to think about how you're going to prepare a meal. And a lot of times people, when they want to donate to pantries, something that was brought up to my attention when I worked at an agency was donating things that you would eat. Because one of the hard things is like, it's cheaper to get off-brand things, but then what does it mean for someone to shop and never see a brand?
Yeah, that's important.
And then also a lot of pantries, I can't speak for Swoops, they want cash donations, because if you donate food, people get this warm feeling, if I dropped all these goods off, they have to store it, things expire. And sometimes pantries can get cheaper products than you can by going outside of that. But it doesn't give us such the warm feeling to write a check. And so thinking about how we can do that.
Well, while we're plugging resources, I know a really hot topic, I mean, among every generation right now is AI. One of the things that I learned recently is if you do have those ingredients, and say you've got chicken in your pantry, or hopefully not chicken in your pantry, chicken in your fridge that's going to go bad soon, and you've got a couple random ingredients in your pantry that you also need to use, you can ask AI, what can I make out of this?
Chat will tell you.
They'll give you recipes, and say they give you a recipe that's got tomatoes in it. You're like, I don't have tomatoes, what can I do instead? And it'll work with you based on what ingredients you have. I just learned that recently, and it's really neat. And it's a great way to just brainstorm and try creative new ways to just incorporate, keep what you're eating exciting. Like you deserve to enjoy what you're eating.
Exactly.
So,
Just like you said, you should enjoy it. And that will help you to know how to put these different ingredients together to make a meal that's something you actually like, because you're putting in things that you actually like.
Yeah, just listening to this conversation makes me think that your next gig should be creating a recipe cookbook.
I mean, so actually,
she's like, yeah, it's already in my game.
When I moved up here from Tennessee, I had some friends that are just like, well, how do you make your potato soup? How do you make your Alfredo? How do you make your biscuits and gravy? So I ended up making a little Google Doc that I sent to my friends. And there's certain things that I don't skimp on. Like I like my Bertolli Alfredo sauce, and I like my Tennessee Pride sausage. But other than that, so many things are interchangeable. And I think that's another thing too, that I've learned from dealing with things like this, is that I don't have to have name brand pasta. I don't have to have the most expensive milk. I don't have to have. There's a lot of things that are comparable on the shelves that allow for more breathing room to allow me to get the things that I know I do like, the brands that I do like. And so
let's talk about the things that you need, the nutritionist things, right? The nutrition that fuels our body. Do you sometimes find it challenging finding those nutritious items around campus, or especially with the prices of food right now?
Definitely. I think one of the biggest things, I mean, even growing up, fresh fruits and vegetables were a luxury, because not only are they costly, but they go bad so quickly. And, growing up, my mom only went grocery shopping when she did get her food stamps, when she got her EBT, and that was once a month. So a lot of times we would go grocery shopping with the anticipation of those groceries lasting a month. And, even now I go grocery shopping on Mondays. Some fruits and vegetables don't last a whole week. So, a lot of times we would encounter the first couple of days after that grocery trip, we were eating good. But towards the end of that, you were kind of scrambling to find what you can do. And, a lot of times if you don't have time to go to the pantry, if you could only get one day a week, and it isn't when they first open, you're kind of working with what you have. And a lot of times there aren't fresh fruits and vegetables. I know, going back to the stigmatization of it, you see a lot of people kind of talking down on people who eat fast food, who don't have fresh fruits and vegetables. But for a lot of people, that can be viewed as a luxury. You know, it's a toss-up. Do I want to spend $3 on fresh strawberries, or do I want to, you know, get something like a fruit juice instead, and then get something more sustainable that'll last in my pantry, like canned fruit, canned vegetables? And that was something I had fresh green beans for the first time last year, because I had always just had canned green beans. I grew up, that's what I was used to. Tried fresh green beans for the first time. They're amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
There's a difference too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things that, you know, even though I have, like, now I'm very blessed to have the resources that I do now. And it was just something that I never even considered there being a noticeable difference of. And I just think that with social media and everyone sharing, you know, their large grocery trips, and it can be disheartening at times to see how easy it seems for everyone else to live these lifestyles where they have these fresh ingredients, or always trying new recipes. But, you know, I've been the one checking out at the grocery store, and I see how quickly that number gets so large, and it's overwhelming sometimes. The best way to get away from that is to understand, you know, it's not a bad thing to not have fresh, crispy greens in your diet. It doesn't make you less of a person to not have these resources, because, you know, growing up, I thought it was normal. I didn't realize until, you know, I got to the age where I started going to friends' house. I'm like, wow, they have a second fridge in their garage just for soda,
Or like hard shell and soft shell tacos.
Yeah.
But you bring up a really good point of like feeling ostracized, of like, I haven't had food experiences that everyone has had. And depending where you go to college, it's like people are like, you haven't had sushi? And you're like 18, is like, no. But they think like that's normal, and then having green beans for the first time. And so I think being aware of people have different access to food, and what we think are normal things are not always normal.
Well, you brought up a good point there too, with just access to food. I think that was a big barrier, you know, like I said, growing up in a very rural area. The only grocery store within, I think, like 15, 20 minutes, you know, other than Dollar General, which doesn't have fresh options at all, was, you know, a little corner market. It was IGA, and it did have fresh stuff, but it was crazy expensive. And, you know, the milk was expensive, the eggs were expensive, the meat. And so, you know, you only went there out of necessity. And, you know, that's, again, having to make a sacrifice. Do I, you know, save on the gas money by going to what's closer, or do I go all the way, you know, because we would go across state lines into Kentucky, where fortunately they didn't have tax on groceries, but, you know, that was an extra 10, 15 minutes out of the way. And even then, we only had 2 grocery stores. We only had a Kroger and a Food City. Another thing I learned was taking advantage of those rewards opportunities, you know, seeing what was on sale, using those reward points, finding ways to, you know, if they had a sale on pasta, take that opportunity to get, you know, 5 boxes of pasta for $1 each, you know, using those fuel points to save then on groceries. But, you know, it's all about learning how to navigate it in the way that's best for you.
Mental load of like, okay, like when I eat things, I eat what I want versus, well, this is what the store's telling me is cheapest, so let me get it. Like, that's just
definitely
very difficult to do. And then,
But it also teaches individuals not to be wasteful, because that's what I'm hearing. Casey's not wasteful, you know, with her food selections and how she prioritizes things. And I think that's a good thing. And, you know, through your journey, I mean, you're in a great place right now working on your MBA, which I love, and you're finishing soon. But you've had that experience, and so you're more empathetic to others. And I think that's really important.
Absolutely. I love
something. My last plug is like with events, there's always leftover food, and, you know, having Tupperware in hand or plastic bags, or as faculty or staff, having those things to be like, please take this. Because some people are like, I don't want to, like, it will go to waste.
That's true.
And I don't know how the food services are here, but some places like catering, they won't let you take things home because of food. That, like, because of food safety.
Set out little cardboard boxes. They're like, take Take it with
Yeah,
you.
so like we have department things. It's just like, please take this so it doesn't sit out. You know, I have a fridge a mini fridge in my office, because sometimes it's like, well, there's hot dogs left over, but they're not going to be heated. And so you can put them in my office and like you can take it later, because there's so much shame. And it's like, as faculty, I try to be like, here's my big purse.
Right.
Do you want a bag? Do you want a bag?
Because you know you're going to want it later.
Yeah, and it's just like people are like happy. It's like, oh, get you a bag. I brought bags for everybody.
Well, it's kind of like a running joke in our department that, you know, if there's food, I'm going to be there.
Right. Yeah.
But there's, you know, a sense like you shouldn't be ashamed to want to eat. And, you know, I'll bring Tupperware. I've brought Tupperware to events. I've brought plastic bags to events. I'll be the first one to go downstairs to one of the little restaurants in the student center and say, can I have a box just for and
Why
and
not?
take food.
And I'm so glad we're talking about this shame issue. We're almost out of time, so we're going to wrap it up real quick. But can you walk us through someone who needs to go to Swoops, wants to go to Swoops, but has no idea what that experience is like? When you walk through the door, what do you feel? What do you do? How do others react to you? Can you walk them through that to make it easier for them to make that trek?
Yeah. So like I said, they're very kind there. They're very friendly. But I understand that it can be overwhelming to a student for the first time going someplace like this, not really knowing what to expect. I remember my first time. I had no clue, you know, what I was going into, who I was going to have to talk to. I didn't know the process, but, you know, essentially there's an intake form on their website that isn't an application. They're not going to approve you or disapprove you. It's just so they can understand who they're serving in the community. And once you complete that intake form, you're welcome to go in at any time. You go in, I bring my own grocery bag just because it's easier. And then you start out just scanning the shelves, taking what you need. It's really nice because if you don't want to have to talk to anyone, you don't want to have to interact with anyone, you don't have to.
Okay, good.
They've got signs on the shelves that say, all right, canned vegetables, 1 can a person. Frozen items, 1 frozen item a person. 1 gallon of milk, 3 potatoes a person. And so it's really easy to just walk through and, you know, just follow the signs basically of understanding the steps of the process. And then once you get to the end, you put your bag on the scale. And again, this is not for judgment. It's just so they can track how much they're moving through so they can better understand the resources that they'll need following that. And they take your student ID just so they could get your student ID number. Your name is never on anything. You know, they even have raffles. You know, if you bring your own grocery bag, they put you into a raffle for a Kroger gift card. When you put your name on that raffle ticket, it's not your name, it's your student number. And so, you know, there's no place where your name's going to be posted on, oh, Casey goes to Swoop's Pantry, guys. Everyone listen. And there's nowhere that can happen, like no step through the process. And but yeah.
Good. Wow. Any last thoughts before we wrap it up? This has been, as always, a great show. I love the plugs that both of you share.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. I'm gonna start going to Aldi more myself.
Right. Yeah. And I have to learn Casey's recipes. My goodness.
Yeah.
Any last things? I think so. Swoops, I don't know if it's at least twice a year, do campus-wide donations. So I think a week or two ago, in the beginning of the year, and like our students are using these things and also thinking about having reoccurring donations occur that are tax deductible. And so that's something I'm gonna do after here, is donate to them and reminding yourself, like, our students are using these services. Like, these are necessary things. And, you know, maybe keeping extra Ziploc bags in your office to be like, at the event, do you, like, what are we taking home? Because, like, we don't want to store anything in the fridge and then, wasteful, like, right? Yeah. And so I think these are really important conversations we're having.
I think my biggest takeaway from, you know, just all of this discussion is don't be afraid to talk to others, whether that's asking for help if you need it, asking for direction towards these resources, asking for recipes. I mean, even searching recipes. But not only that, like, my favorite thing to do is to talk to my friends about Swoops and bring them to Swoops for the first time. Now, like, look how cool this is. Oh, there's always cool stuff over here. And, you know, if you're kind of not knowing, you know, like, oh, I want to go to Swoops, but I don't really know how it works, so I don't want to go through something, because new experiences can be scary.
Right.
So find a friend to go with you. See if you know anyone else who's been, ask them their experience. Like, hey, next time you go, can I tag along? And, you know, sharing those experiences with people, sharing those resources, because, you know, it's in a way need-based. So the more need they see, the more it can grow into something that could just continue to help more people.
Very true. Very
What
true.
about telling people not to be ashamed?
Yeah.
You know that saying, tough times don't last that long? I think that's, that's a great saying for
Yeah.
our students, that tough times don't last.
I think too, it's really easy for, I mean, especially now where, you know, getting this new job, graduating, and people see me doing well in many ways, but they also see me still using these resources. So, you know, I think I have a great opportunity to have a platform where, like, I know I have so many resources and blessings and opportunities coming my way, but I'm still unabashedly using these resources that are here to help me. And, you know, my friends who are kind of in the same position see me doing that, and they're like, you know what? Casey's doing it. I'll go too. I'll go with her.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you both so much for joining us today. Another really important show. And I really do hope that it encourages more students to get the help that they need. And you all have definitely made that easier for them. So thank you.
Encourage more donations to Swoop.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Donate to Swoops.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys.
Well, Melissa, that was another great show. You know, I've been here a long time, and I had no idea that Swoop's Pantry had so many wonderful services for our students.
Absolutely. And they help so many people. And I'm glad some of our students know that that's a resource on campus.
So do I.
Yeah,
So
me
do I.
too. So that's all we have for today. As always, it is our hope that the show truly has enlightened you and that it makes your life and your mental health better.
And please remember that there are always resources out there to help you. All you have to do is reach out and ask. I'm praying that you will get the help that you need. And finally, before we click off the podcast, please like us, subscribe us, share, comment. You can even send us an email. We love to hear from you, and we appreciate you reaching out to others. Y'all be good.